Hello and welcome to a momentous AutoTalk Live. And I say momentous because this is probably the first and last long proper episode in a while, because we have been all over the world and country and so forth, and Graham's been too busy.
I was going to say, don't put me in your travel suitcase plans, you pair of little exiting gnomes, you.
And next
Somebody
week
has
it's
to keep the place rolling.
And next week it's Matariki. So, week after next is Matariki.
No, week after.
That's right. Because that weekend I've got a plan. I've got a MG Cyberster, about 1,000K road trip, and my daughter. So that's going to be fun. But anyway, I've been obviously traveling the world a little bit. I've been to, I think I was in China, I think, for the last one. Was I at home? No, one before last in China, the last one was at home.
To forget where I was last week, Richard.
Or was I? Well, no, last week, Korea? No? Yeah. So, Iceland next week? But I'm not sure if I'll be in Iceland.
This is sounding wanky about a minute, Richard. I should just point this out on behalf of the viewing audience right about now.
But anyway.
I forget where I've been, but, that's old age. Richard's got a bit to go for that.
Well, okay. I just want to note something in regards to age, and our viewers will notice this. I've been dropping a bit of weight lately, as you do with, trying to travel, trying to be healthier. The problem I have now that I'm older is I've discovered every time I lose weight, look what happens. Every time I lose weight, I lose about a centimeter of hair.
Just go for the Mr. In-Betweener look.
Well, Mr. McDonald, you will remember me from the early to mid 2000s when I could grow a full head of hair. And what did I do to it every few weeks?
There's the irony, right?
Beyond the number one, I was razored for a lot of my 20s.
You were. Yeah, you were the proper friend.
Yes, now I'm doing it naturally. So yes, comments into the side. Do you think I should just give up and shave the lot off? I don't know. Maybe I should.
I give that some weighty consideration, Richard, first before you go down that particular pathway. But there you are. You
certainly
look
not.
Like
Certainly not.
Airline travel guy. He's shaved all this. He look like Noel Phillips.
Certainly, I shouldn't do it before Iceland because it's going to be cold. But anyway, beside the point. Now, I think we're going to start today with 3 personal comments or personal things before we get into the news. We're going to start at the bottom, David. You indicated prior to us going live that you've been a naughty boy.
Yes, well, my wife and I decided that we would get a full awning kit made up for our caravan, so the walls, the floor, etc. That involved taking the caravan up to Tauranga for a week, and while I was there,
Stop. Can I guess? You bought a new caravan?
No. So while I was up there, I noticed on Trade Me a motorbike. So I have a problem. See, I've got a sore right shoulder, and while I love riding the cruiser that I have, it's a big Motor Guzzi California, the seating position makes my shoulder ache, and so it's a real pain. I can do about 40 minutes, and then I've got to stop and have a rest, and that's just annoying. And as much as I wanted to keep it, I decided that, no, maybe I need a different one. I saw this one in Rotorua, so I popped down for a bit and took it for a ride. And I thought, this is a bit nice. And so I took it for a longer ride, and then I decided to turn around, and then I paid him the money, and I went up a couple of weeks ago and bought it home.
Oh, what'd you buy?
As you do. I bought, it's a 2016 motorbike, but it's an Aprilia Capanord Rally. So it's an adventure touring bike, which is not very adventurous in that sense. It's a 19-inch front wheel. So it's made for well-formed gravel roads and tar seal. So it's one of those bikes that you say that if I want to go touring and I don't want to be afraid of going on gravel roads, this is the bike that can do it. And it's gold, and it comes with all the goodies, the crash bar, the LED lights, the panniers, the whole setup. And it was a good price. So I bought it, and then my wife told me off, and so now I'm selling my other bike.
Yes. So what's for sale? So any bike dealers listening, what have you got that could go into this stock if they're eager?
Well, it's manufactured in 2014, but first registered in Japan in 2017. So it's a Maragazi, California 1400 touring. It's the custom bike with the touring kit, so side panniers, and it will come with the top box at a very reasonable price too. I'm looking around about 12 grand for it, which would be probably the best priced California on the market at the moment. And I have to say the market is very slow, so I'm having a bit of
I'm
trouble
already
trying
typing. Is this available?
Lowest price, sir.
You ever had any experience selling stuff recently, David? I've been playing a little bit with the marketplace. Is this available? Is this available?
Mm-hmm.
So, welcome to that world.
Now, Graham, your little vitriol you want to spout. Go for it.
Vitriol. I just thought it was a great day for Old Glory and barbecue and Budweiser beer. The Ram is back. If you haven't been watching the news, the chief executive of Stellantis or Chrysler Corporation or Ram or whatever they call themselves these days, lose, and he's come out public and said we were wrong, and they've brought back the Hemi in the Ram, and so I'm sure it's very good. The Hurricane 6-cylinder engine, I've seen the performance figures, sounds very, very good. But it's not a bent iron piece of moldy old dough. And so they're bringing back the Ram in 2026. The order book was open. I looked at some figures there. It was 395 horsepower for the base model Hemi, 410 pound-foot of torque. If you compare that to the Hurricane, which put out 420 and 469, it is clearly underpowered, but nobody cares because it has 8 cylinders of Detroit's finest, or probably Canada's finest, beating away like a heartbeat. So it's quite nice to see, first of all, that they've called the new Ram emblem, which goes on the side of the truck, they've called it the symbol of protest, which I thought was an unusual marketing technique. But if you think about it, I think it's just nice to see a manufacturer saying, you know what, that might not have been the smartest move. Let's bring it back. And I just think it's really cool. As a former Ram owner myself, I think that's a good moment for car people.
It's not like our children need to breathe in the future or anything like that, is it, Graham?
Oh, listen to it, Richard. Hey, I know I'm not even going to say what I'm going to say because you know what I'm going to say next, and I won't say it. But those of you out watching right now, you're probably agreeing. I know you're agreeing with me. Most of you.
I think it's cool that they brought it back. The sad reality is it will be a small and declining part of the model's share, but hey, at least you've got the choice. That's the key thing there.
They're talking
They're
talking 40%. 40%, Richard. That is not small.
I know, but Ford still has V8s available on the F-150, and it's down into the low teens as a percentage share of what they sell.
25%. I read this morning, F-150, 25%.
That's the number that's being bandied about. It's lower than that. But yeah. The calculations I've seen for that, the calculations, if you've Googled it and done that, I've done the same thing. And the calculations start on 2018, and it's fallen since then. So, yeah, it's I think it's great. It'll bring it back. I mean, a lot of the publications are pointing out the key thing is the TRX is back. I don't think that many mainstream model Rams will still go with the V8, but the TRX being back is a good choice, I think, to be honest.
Graham, I think having listened to you this morning and a couple of other times, I've concluded you're living in the wrong country.
Oh,
we all know this.
Don't you know it, David? And there's a very long story associated with the reason why I'm here. I'm not in America, but I've given it several cracks in my life, to be fair, at doing exactly that. But that little pesky thing called a green card always got in the way of that particular plan.
Yeah. Yes.
And I'd probably have a Ram, and I'd probably have a V8 Ram if I lived there.
Now let's.
No, actually, you know what? Back in the old days, I would have had the mighty Cummins. I would have gone for the 6BT Cummins diesel.
Well, you can still have it. You can still have a six cylinder Cummins in a Ram in America.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, and here for that matter. Yeah,
the early 5.9. No, that was the mountain motor. That was the engine that set the diesel world and trucks on fire.
Yeah. The irony being is for those who are like EVs and hybrids they suck is that the straight six is I think not a hybrid and the V8 is a mild hybrid. So yeah. Anyway,
Mm.
I'm going to stick on the American theme, and this has been breaking over the last 24 hours, but certainly accelerated overnight. Have you guys been watching the meltdown, the mega meltdown
Yes. It is
between
like
Elon Musk
Swiss cheese
and
on a hot day.
Donald Trump? This is, people are now picking this could bring down Trump. And we could end up with President Vance within the next coming months if Elon goes on full attack.
Mm-hmm.
It is crazy what has been happening. And if you want to see what I'm talking about, I'm going to pull up Elon Musk's Twitter page. I'm still struggling with the concept of X. And let's look at his tweets over the last 24 hours, because they have been hilarious.
Is it time to create a new political party in America that actually represents the 80% in the middle? Cutting. The Epstein comments, I think that's going to have a bit of a shockwave through a lot of people.
How can I see the votes? Oh, here, so you can see the answer. I can't see the answer, unfortunately. But without voting, shall we vote? So we can see the results?
Go yes.
Yeah, go ahead. Go on, vote and just see.
81.6% yes. And remember that Elon Musk's Twitter followers are, at this point, Trump voters. So that's Trump's own base turning against him. He reposted, Elon's stance is principled, Trump's stance is practical. Tech needs Republicans for the future. Republicans need tech for the future. Drop the tax cuts, cut support, get the bill through. A lot of this comes down to the fact that basically Elon actually showed some humanity and was like, why are we giving tax cuts to the rich when we're trying to cut costs that are affecting others? Which is kind of weird. Which is kind of, I guess, good. I'll give Elon that. And he's right. Why, if you're trying to do a massive deficit, are you giving tax cuts to the rich? A video of Donald Trump partying with Jeffrey Epstein. Of course, he's sharing a video from what he has been recently calling the fake news media, but apparently they're currently not the fake news media. So, yeah, I wonder, my whole rants in the past of people being disingenuous about what they're saying and what they're sharing and who they're accusing things of. Well, there you go right there. The Trump tariffs will cause a recession in the second half of this year. Woo.
A lot of people have been calling that.
Yep. Can I finally say that Trump's tariffs are super stupid? I don't know what this one is. Oh, it's just more stuff about Epstein.
So there's a bit of a thinking around this, gentlemen. I was pondering this morning. Actually, I wasn't realizing we were going to talk about this on the program, but I wonder whether, to an extent, Elon's a smart enough man to know when it's time to pull the parachute cord. And the fear that he has, irrespective of whether he privately or otherwise agreed or with Trump's political mandates, particularly around tariffs and everything else, he understood that the fallout, when things start to go wrong, that would capture Elon is greater than pulling the pin now and alienating part of Trump's core base. And so this is a political move by Elon to distance himself from what he thought was inevitably a train wreck anyway in the making. If you look at what's happened with Walmart and other major American institutions that have come out and said, you know what, we just can't hold our pricing back anymore. And so consumers are starting to see the tangible effect of the tariffs, irrespective of what the long-term motive had been to try and bring back so-called manufacturing into America. And let's not get into the reasons why, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, but possibly Elon has seen the writing on the wall and thought, now is the time to distance myself, because if I attach the Tesla and the SpaceX brand to Trump any longer, it's going to decimate my company. And this is the parachute cord.
Well, here's the question you've got to ask us about the starting point of this. Did Elon know that Trump was going to go where he was going to want to go, and he thought that he was a tool to achieve what he needs to do and then move on? Did Trump sell Elon a lie about what he would do, and then he's gone and done what he was always going to do? Is it somewhere in between? Yeah.
I have a slightly different view about Musk. I think Musk, in the beginning, Musk did not like Trump. So I was a little bit surprised when he aligned himself to the Trump campaign because he's been very anti-Trump over the years. But then when I looked into it and thought about it, my view, and I'm trying not to be too conspiratorial around this, was that he thought if he could align himself with Trump, Tesla as a car brand was starting to mature, the growth for his businesses in SpaceX. And he saw this as a way, I'm thinking, that of getting government contracts for his SpaceX program. What I think has happened is that Musk didn't appreciate the fallback that he would get around the Tesla brand. And the sales hit has been massive, particularly in Europe. And he's sort of been looking at it saying, well, I can't afford to have my bread and butter go. And so he's come out and he's started to talk some sense around why do you give tax cuts to the rich? The rich don't really need it. And we've had people over here in New Zealand say that as well. Gareth Morgan was on record of saying, the rich can afford to pay some more. Why? But, as long as you leave those tax loopholes there, I'm going to use them. So close those tax loopholes. And I think Trump is going to be in for a particularly difficult time. And I think Trump probably hasn't been totally honest. I don't think Trump knows himself what he's doing from week to week.
Yeah. Look, I think there's another element here of that Elon got caught up in the hype. And, he became this instant global megastar when he hitched himself to the Trump wagon, and he was standing at the front of stadiums with 50,000 people in them and waving his hands, and people go wild and blah, blah, blah. And he got carried away with that, I think, to an element. As far as getting contracts for SpaceX, I'm not so sure. SpaceX already had all the contracts there were to hold. They are basically America's space industry at this point. Now Trump's threatening. The interesting thing is Trump's now threatening to cancel all the stuff of SpaceX's contracts, and Elon has responded by pausing the Falcon program, which is how America gets anything to space at the moment, because Boeing's aircraft are grounded. So yeah, it's I'm not sure there was that much of a plan in it, and I wonder if he rode a train that he's that's kind of fallen over on him. So yeah,
or it's a Sub-Zero Armageddon game.
Yeah, Ian Miles Chong, President versus Elon. Who wins? My money is on Elon. Trump should be impeached, and JD Vance should replace him. Because the original big bomb drop one that marked the turn was time to drop the really big bomb. Real Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. That's the real reason they have not been made public. Have a nice day, DJT. That's basically the end of that was the text that kind of signaled the end of their end of the conversation for them. So
I think you should probably give his golden key back, maybe, if he's not asked for it.
Yeah. And now you got to wonder if it was Trump that gave him the black eye, not his kid. Don Trade Trump. The easiest way to save money in our budget, billions and billions of dollars, is to terminate Elon's governmental subsidies and contracts. Well, they'd already canned most of the subsidies. It was only the contracts. I was always surprised that Biden didn't do it. And in light of the president's statement about my cancellation of my government contract, SpaceX will begin decommissioning its Dragon spacecraft immediately. So yeah, America can't go to space now. That is the really simple, line. So
and on the sidelines, China has been incredibly quiet, just quietly rubbing their hands because they are a very patient country, and they're thinking, this is playing in the way we want it to play.
Mm-hmm. Don Trump, Elon was wearing thin. I asked him to leave. I took away his EV mandate that forced everyone to buy electric cars that nobody else wanted, that he knew for months I was going to do, and he just went crazy. So yeah, this is going to be a fun
front out the front of the White House. Apart from that, but Donald, the bit that you orchestrated, just apart from that. But what does this mean? We probably shouldn't labour on this for too long. Our viewers out there probably going, "Oh God, just leave it now." Although I've got to say, this is going to be one of those stories. I think you're right. Probably the story of the year in terms of very public meltdowns between arguably two of the most powerful figures in the.
Oh, this will change world politics. This
it will.
Watch this. This will change world politics.
It's huge. What does this mean for our industry? Certainly here, looking at the EV industry, for example, is what is this going to do short term for particularly the Tesla brand? And then we're seeing the sort of quiet rise of the Chinese EV brands as well. What is this going to do?
Well, look, I think it's you've seen with you're going to see with America blocking Chinese EVs, they have become, I think, more aggressive into the likes of Australia and New Zealand. Certainly, Australia. Australia's just facing a massive wave of cut price Chinese offerings at the moment. Product's been refocused onto Australia, and China moves fast on product. That will spill over into New Zealand. I suspect Tesla will be looking to clear hardware and keep cash flow going, as they probably suffer a little bit in America. They'll probably suffer less in other countries now, but they'll suffer more in America. Tesla's share price, as we've seen, has dropped 40%, so we could see some cut pricing in New Zealand. Tesla in New Zealand and Australia have actually been gearing up to be more of a proper car company lately. They've even got marketing staff now. They're literally holding a car launch next week, which they just don't do.
I didn't even think Tesla did car launches.
Yep. So Tesla is very much changing, and I think they're getting ready to fight on a more even footing. So I think it's going to be bad. Look, as far as the subsidies and things go, Elon is one of those people who's already suggested that we don't, and it's the same as a lot of people in the EV industry here. And David, you might have a take on this as we move through it, is that you don't necessarily need to give EVs subsidies. And this is my position too. But what you do need to do is make sure that the full cost and impact of running ICE vehicles in a economy and in a market is on an even footing, on a similar kind of keel. So, we all agree that dumping shit into the environment is bad. So have rules around emissions, have start to look at strategies that encourage manufacturers, we're doing that in New Zealand, to not put out high emitting vehicles. Make choice available is fine, but make sure people are paying for that choice. That there's a cost to do that. It's just putting it on an even footing. At the moment in New Zealand, we're disincentivizing EVs by having an incredibly unfair RUC system. Avoid stuff like that. That's my take on it.
Yeah, I pick it up on RUC. I've been an advocate of having RUC for all vehicles so that you put them all on an even footing. I don't think it's particularly unfair, but it is a little bit lumpy in terms for the small cars. And we always argued this. But
my small family SUV pays the same RUC as a 3.5-ton truck.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've argued this when in the early days with the small diesels, and they were disincentivized because of the way the RUC was structured. There really needs to be a under 2-ton band and then a 2 to 3.5. But most EVs would get into that second bracket anyway. So the question then is, how do you further disincentivize fossil fuel vehicles? And that's what your fuel economy standard is. You might have arguments that it's not going fast enough, and I will either agree or disagree. I think it's actually what the National Party has done, is they've put in New Zealand context the targets for it on a much better footing. It's a marathon rather than a sprint race. That's the phrase that I've always used, and I know that's the phrase that the MIA still continues to use. Is that it's a marathon. Get the changes, lock those changes in place so the manufacturers have some degree of certainty. But with the shrinking targets, it becomes more and more difficult to absorb the costs. In the next 5 years, are going to see some fundamental change around that. What's happening in America at the moment? Will it affect our market here? Probably not drastically, unless there is a big meltdown in the US. But I think the Chinese brands have been very clever. They have been getting a foothold in here. The quality of their vehicles is improving, and they're incredibly price competitive. The other thing to remember is, along with the disincentivization of fossil fuel vehicles, look at the research that is happening around battery technology. There's some really interesting stuff happening out there. I mean, the latest this week, I think, was changing their anodes in a battery has enabled them to go up from 300 kilowatt hours per kilogram, 300 watts per kilogram to 500. So huge energy density increase for a lithium battery, which has sort of leapfrogged the solid state technology. We are going to see battery technology continue to make it easier for vehicles to be EVs and compete squarely with the fossil fuels. It's getting that range and that power, because it's when you have to do heavy workloads is where it cuts in. So I think the next 3 to 5 years, it's going to be really, really interesting, and America is going to play a bit of a part. And I think our biggest concern will be what will happen with the stock markets and what that then means for share prices, what it means for R&D, and what shifts happen there. But I think if Musk,
I'm not sure America's going to play that big of a role in battery technology. Even Tesla uses Chinese battery technology now.
Yeah, no, but I was
left a mile behind.
Yeah, but I was just talking about battery technology in terms of that's advancing alongside governments worldwide, apart from America, bringing in their fuel economy standards. And even Australia has a fuel economy standards a bit softer than ours, but it will bite. It will bite, and that market will affect us as well.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Well, anyway, the world's falling apart, but we'll see how it goes.
Well, it certainly is in terms of the vehicle market here in New Zealand. We sort of touched on it this morning, but I was going to say, personally, and I haven't spoken to anybody out there in the trade that's anything different to me. I'm sure there are guys out there that are doing all right, but what a rotten period of time right now in terms of business.
Yes. Well, let's jump into the story, into the stats, and we can touch on that. We'll move fairly fast through this, seeing as we're 26 minutes through already, but plenty to run through.
I still like
new vehicle registration steady in May as commercials bounce back. New vehicle registrations totaled 11,200 units in May. Stable result in line with April's performance. Some excluded 7,041 passenger cars and 4,169 light commercials. So steady with May, but yeah, not great in the longer term. Toyota was top in passenger cars, followed by Mitsubishi and Ford. And then in the commercial sector was Toyota, Ford, and Mitsubishi. Toyota RAV4 was the top passenger model, followed by the Mitsubishi ASX and Ford Everest. And then if we go to the commercial models, it was the Ford Ranger at over 1,000. I keep hearing bad things about Ranger registrations, but over 1,000, you can't just deal or reg 1,000 Ford Rangers. So 910 Toyota Hiluxes and 238 Nissan Navaras. That was there. So that's not a bad month for those. Similar commentary from the MIA figures. Year to date, it's down 3%. Motor Industry Chief Executive Amy Wiley noted that while May's result was a positive sign, the broader market has yet to regain momentum. We probably still have a period of subdued activity to come, but these May numbers do offer some cause for optimism. I think in the new car market, we've bottomed out. That's my take. We've hit the bottom.
Yeah, I think that would be my conclusion too. And I think Amy's spot on with the commentary in that it's going to take a little while. And if you look at it historically, look at the GFC in 2008, 2009, and then the previous time that the market went soft, it's taken a little while to climb out. So I think it'll take a little while. It'll be 2 to 3 years to properly climb out and regain. The GFC took about 5 years. So I guess the positive sign that the market will be looking for, at least in the new vehicles, is has it bottomed out? And I think it is flattening out. I think we've got a steady supply, and I would expect it to sort of slowly start to increase over time.
I think we'll actually see 2 strong months over June and July, simply because we have the combination of 3 things: record dairy payout, the ability to bring forward the expensing or the depreciation of assets for businesses, and field days. So those 3 things in combined, I think, could be a massive sugar pill for June and July. June for field days itself, July for deliveries from field days, maybe stretching a little bit further along. So I don't think we're going to be able to tell a huge amount over the next little bit. So, I
think what's interesting in those stats, if you look at the top 5 selling vehicles outside of trucks, they're all SUVs. They're all SUVs. So SUVs still rule the roost when it comes to new vehicle sales in New Zealand. Top 5. And one of the issues that the new car industry faces is I call it the Commodore paradox, which is back in the days when you could buy a brand new Commodore, is before they had the horrible European source thing, real Commodores, as they say, is that there were far more buyers for used Commodores than there were people that were buying brand new ones only 2, 3, 4 years prior to. And it's the same issue right now in the new vehicle marketplace, is we're not necessarily actually selling the right number of vehicles new that the used market downstream, 3, 4, 5, 6 years of age, are wanting to buy. And we've noticed, I'm looking at the sort of the market pricing and the activity, there's just huge demand out there on a wholesale level for Kiwi new passenger cars. And SUVs are always popular anyway, but the passenger car model in particular, because they just didn't make as many of those, sell as many of those as there are a buyer base downstream. It's a bit of a paradox, but there is definitely that little hollow in the market with passenger vehicle sales at a new point and a marketplace below it 4 or 5 years later that wants far more than we sold 4 or 5 years ago.
I think it's really interesting that if we go back 3 years ago, a lot of companies, Twitter was the lead, where the brands were saying, we're backing off rentals. We're not, we'd rather go for higher margin business. We don't think necessarily dumping vehicles in there is the best way to go forward. None of them are saying that now. They're all sending in volume. They're all sending in volume, and they're all taking them back a year later and just doing the deal for the difference. And if I look at that top 10 again, that top 5 again, how you've got a fair idea that all those models are fairly heavily represented on rental fleets. So
COF numbers would be interesting to actually look at, wouldn't they? If you actually analyze the COF issuance.
We don't get the rental numbers straight away. I'll have them probably for next week's show, but we can pull up the rental numbers for next week's show.
Graham, coming back to your comment, Graham, about passenger and the demise of the passenger car. As the GFC, as we climbed out of the GFC, if you look at just the broad mix between passenger car, SUVs, and light commercials, so vans and utes, the market share for vans and utes went from about 19% to up to around 28, 29% by the time I retired. Passenger vehicles fell from about 64% down to around about 20%, and so the gap was filled by SUVs. And if you have a look at what's happening in the Australian market has had a stronger appetite for SUVs in New Zealand, a little bit ahead, but the New Zealand market's following. So SUVs is where it is at, and it's become increasingly difficult to sell and keep selling passenger vehicles. And I think the only ones who can make any money out of it are the ones that put it into a niche market, so your luxury vehicles, etc. So it's becoming very difficult to sell passenger vehicles at an affordable price and to make money on it, because the consumers just aren't buying it, not in the new market.
One of the reasons the top end, and I'll touch on this for a second from an importing point of view. So for importers saying, well, hang on a minute, why would I want to buy a 2020, 21, 22 model used car, like not an SUV, but a car in Japan? I'm competing directly against the New Zealand new market. And the pricing doesn't appear to be any different. Why would I want to do that? And the reason is, I think it's really simple, is because you just can't get the stock in New Zealand. There are more buyers than there are stock available. And we can't go back and retroactively manufacture 4 or 5 year old, 3-year-old cars. So it's a bit of a niche within the used import industry that I think we're still seeing now for very late model stock from Japan, even if the price only matches what the comparable New Zealand new vehicle is, with all the factory warranty and the supplied by all the paraphernalia that goes with it. They just don't have enough of them.
Yep. Difficult. Right, let's move on to the actual used market. The import used market remains subdued in May, with a total of 7,563 light vehicles registered, 7,273 passenger vehicles, and 290 commercials, according to agency data. The result is down on the same month last year and reflects ongoing supply constraints, soft buy demand, and pricing pressures. Totally, the passenger market, as always, I kind of feel like the model and make lists are pretty pointless unless you're actually sitting there working out exactly what you want to look at in the future. Aqua, Prius, Corolla, Note.
What's changed?
Yeah, exactly. In news commercials, high SNV had MV200, but basically,
go back on that for a second. Go and look at those commercial numbers. Okay, the commercial models. One thing you will have noticed, I think, is that the number of high aces and NV350s in particular coming into New Zealand right now has dropped. And it's not because the demand isn't there, but they have become, they're manufactured currently in Japan of unobtainium. And I've had a comment from a number of different commercial dealers that we speak with or have some interaction with, and the same in Australia as well, that also have a marketplace for used late model high ace fans and NV350s. Can't buy them. And so the number you're seeing, a decline of those models coming in, and there is a decline, is not because we haven't got a market for them. You just can't buy them. You cannot obtain them. They have got so expensive in Japan.
Yeah. Let's look forward to arrivals. Vehicle arrivals stable at 16,000 units in May. Number of new and used vehicles arriving at New Zealand ports in May 2025 totaled 16,021 units, up from 15,440 in April, according to New Zealand Customs motor vehicle data. May figures included 14,277 passenger cars, comprising 8,517 used. I don't think there's any real difference there. It was a 5-week month, and I suspect that's how that's ended up slightly up. Arrivals still aren't one for them.
The used 5,700 used. That is not good.
Doesn't replace. That means dealers are lowering their stock levels.
Yeah, but more importantly, the trade continuity of shipping. If you're involved in logistics, you know right now what you need to fill a boat to, or in terms of your purchase capacity on a boat, to make the numbers stack up and work. And I'd argue and say at 5,700, it doesn't work with the current shipping schedules we appear to have. And that's a worry.
On a long-term average, that's quite low in terms of monthly volume.
Now, some big news. Trade Me has taken a 50% stake in Stuff Digital. And while this doesn't have any significant impact immediately for the motoring market, if you read between the lines, it does. So Trade Me is expanding its digital presence, announcing it will take a 50% stake in Stuff Digital Limited, the business behind stuff.co.nz, New Zealand's most visited news website. The deal brings together two of the country's biggest digital platforms, Trade Me, the leading site for property, motors, jobs, and general classifieds, and Stuff, which commands the largest online news audience in New Zealand. Head of Motors, Jeremy Wade, told AutoTalk that the motors business will not be the first to combine. That will be property, but opportunities will be worked through in the coming months. We'll work with Stuff to see what opportunities there are for our motors customers over the next couple of months. Wade says we are committed to growing our audience for our motors customers, and this is a real opportunity to do so. So interesting there. We obviously saw the news about a month or so ago that, the other side of the duopoly in New Zealand, NZME, had done a deal, or are doing a deal with Cars Guide or Gumtree in Australia to use their listings platform to try and re-enter the listings market in New Zealand. So we could be ended up with this little bit of a head-butting war between the two major players out there. Now, whether
did I hear price rise anywhere, Richard? Did I hear price rise for Trade Me Motors anywhere?
Well, we discussed that previously. But if we end up with two major listings platforms well funded from behind and with tied into the news thing, could we see a more competitive market?
Have you ever in the history of ever, except for, and I go back to the days of, and there'll be some dealers in the back room right now about to groan, I'm sorry, hold your ears, Go Auto, which was the single tool that industry associations and shareholders hated. However, it did have the effect of upsetting the market and dropping prices overnight from the then monopoly that we had. Since that point in time, I haven't heard of any platform ever in the history of ever dropping its prices in a spirit of competition.
I guess the question is, you've got the potential for one of Australia's biggest listing platforms to enter the New Zealand market. Do you think they won't be trying to get some market share somehow?
Oh, hells yes.
I'll leave it at that. I should always declare that Automedia Group does do business with Trade Me through our Autocar brand. So, yeah, just disclaimer there. So, why I try to talk broadly about these things. Now, auto lending is picking up as consumer credit trends improve. Vehicle lending activity is on the rise, with auto loans increasing modestly and credit demand in the wider consumer market showing signs of recovery, according to the latest May credit indicator from Centrix. New auto loan inquiries rose 0.6% year on year, while non-mortgage lending activity, including vehicle finance, credit cards, and personal loans, grew 4.5%, driven by increased activity in recent months. The uptick in credit activity comes as the Reserve Bank cut the official cash rate by 25 basis points to 3.25% amid international tariff uncertainty and global growth concerns. Demand for consumer and business credit rose 4.9% and 8% respectively in May, while new household lending grew 21% year on year, led by a 22.5% lift in new mortgage approvals compared to the April quarter last year. So people are very cautiously starting to borrow again. I want that. I may not have the money now, but I think the market's improving and I might have it over the next little bit.
But one of the issues we're noticing is, though, there appears to be a bit of a rise in the bad credit scenario. So although the inquiry level for finance is up, we're seeing a little bit more of the bad credit that's creeping into applications as well. And that's a real struggle point for the first tier lenders in the marketplace, but how they deal with that bad credit going forward, and probably opportunities for, dare I say it, that sort of second and certainly third tier to kick back in again. Whether or not the triple CFA applies to some of those or not, it depends on your interpretation of what are the rules. But there's a bit of average credit out there floating amongst applications too, a bit more than we've seen for a little while.
Mm-hmm. A little bit of nice news. We'll just throw in the middle here. Where are we?
Yeah, we've been trash talking all morning, haven't we?
Yeah, we have. Wayne Kirk opens new dealership, marks 35 years with Mitsubishi. So Wayne Kirk Motors has celebrated 35 years representing Mitsubishi in Hawke's Bay with the opening of a new purpose-built dealership in Hastings. The new site, which opened in early May, was officially launched by family friend and trustee John Hands. Company founder Wayne Kirk established the business's first Mitsubishi dealership in Waipukurau in 1990. It was led by members of the Mitsubishi Motors New Zealand executive team, including President and CEO Warren Brown, CIO Tony Johnston, and Head of Sales and Operations Hayley White. Hastings Mayor and Sandra Hazelhurst was also present. So, yes, pretty cool there. Unfortunately, I'll go fix the website. For some reason, those photos are showing a bit small. They've got some very tasty-looking classic Mitsubishi vehicles there. Mitsubishi and their dealers, the way they collect old Mitsubishis and restore them beautifully is very impressive. They seem to be really good at having some pretty neat old hardware sitting around.
I've got a friend of mine that actually owns a couple of classic Mitsubishis, who works for one of the Mitsubishi dealers in the South, actually in the North Island, and he actually has an arrangement with them to have his vehicles on display within their forecourt. So you'll find a lot of those are actually owned by Mitsubishi enthusiasts, but with deals done with the dealership to have them on display, and therefore a nice, safe place to have them.
Mitsubishi has a fairly substantial collection themselves, I believe.
They do, yes.
And there's a really good name to hear around too, Wayne Kirk. So that's a name that's been around for a little while now. It's good to see those older established dealerships that have done, really good things consistently all the way through with the continuance. I used to sell vehicles to the Wayne Kirk brand back in the very early 90s, and I was based down in Hamilton with at that stage, the Turners Group. And they are one of our customers in terms of buying stuff out of the central part of New Zealand. And good people to deal with. And that was actually Wayne Kirk, I think himself at that stage. Just a really good company to do business with. Nice, clean, tidy, straightforward, honest business. So it's good to see them doing well.
And they're different from the Auckland Kirk Motors, is that right?
I didn't know there was a relationship between them, no.
Yeah, not much. Right. There's another floating car carrier fire. Car carrier fire under investigation after crew evacuated in Pacific Ocean. A cargo vessel carrying around 3,000 vehicles, including several hundred electric vehicles, was abandoned this week in the Pacific Ocean following a fire that broke out on board. The Liberian-flagged Morning Midas, operated by Zodiac Maritime, was en route from Yantai, China, to Lázaro Cárdenas, Mexico, when smoke was detected on Tuesday. Despite the cruise event spread the fire, it persisted, prompting the full evacuation of all 22 crew members. They were safely rescued by another merchant vessel responding to this distress call. The previous carrier fires, such as the Ace and Grande America, have led to scrutiny of EV battery fire risk. Maritime experts note that combustion vehicles and other factors are also frequently involved in such instance. But of course, that will be another thing of people going and looking at it and suggesting maybe, more car carriers might drop EVs. We'll see.
I know we're not, we don't want to sort of gloss over these things, but we don't want to talk about it too much either because it's quite sensitive for the shipping industry. I do think this is one of the central issues that the EV industry en masse is going to have to overcome, which is the public perception around light-ion battery fire and fire risk. And that's not even necessarily from the public, but it's from public and other authorities, and fire authorities, shippers, ports, parking structures. It's an issue, and we can't overlook it because it's happening, and we know how risk averse a lot of these authority or other bodies can be, and the industry is going to have to find ways to address it.
I actually think it is an issue that's going to largely disappear, because I think we've only got really, and I'm going to see if I can get a video to work on the screen. We've only really got about 3 to 4 years of bulk NCM batteries being part of the EV market. Everyone now, all the major groups are moving to LFP, or they're looking at moving to sodium or other stuff in the future, which are far more stable than the NCM batteries at the moment. And the non NCM batteries are incredibly stable. I'm going to pull up a screen. Let me just see what I can do here.
While you're doing that, Richard, I think the issue is it's not the fires that haven't always started because of the battery. No. They've started somewhere else. And the issue is that once they start somewhere else and get to the batteries then can burn very hot and be very difficult to put out. That's the issue.
The most common, the highest risk of car fire is actually hybrids, not petrol cars or electric vehicles. So this is the famous BYD null penetration test. I'm not sure how well people are going to see it. This was from a visit I did a couple of weeks ago to BYD's headquarters in Shenzhen. It's a bit rough, the video, but what you'll see here is they take two battery cells, one a standard NCM cell, one a BYD LFP blade cell, and they puncture them with a nail, and you'll see the difference is quite dramatic. Cell.
Yep.
Rises several hundred degrees of temperature instantly. This is the same thing happening to a LFP cell.
Everyone's gone silent.
We're waiting for the bomb, and it doesn't happen. That's it. Now we can go through it backwards and forwards. Nothing happens. So this is what we're heading for in the future with battery safety, basically.
I think we've always known that the industry is going to ultimately evolve, if you like, into battery fire safety. My concern, and I know I bring this up all the time, but my concern is we are already in an environment now where a large number of our vehicles in the fleet actually are of the consistency that makes it difficult for fire, for putting out fires, or the perception is. And so we run the risk of having a fleet that is either sidelined by assorted safety measures from authorities and others, or that we rapidly make those current vehicles redundant with the new technology coming through on safety grounds, which will alienate a large number of buyers who actually have invested in the current technology. And I always advocate for this, is don't do things in such enormous leaps that you alienate the entire marketplace that you've just yesterday were saying were the very best thing you could ever buy, by having a new product saying, well, the old one was shit, let's not buy those anymore, they're rubbish. And putting consumers at a disadvantage in the investment they made, a bit like what happened with EV prices when the subsidies were removed, is you were left holding a product that you bought You could only say you bought it on moral grounds, if you like, because you couldn't explain the financial disadvantage you'd now taken with the hit. And is that going to have an effect upon our market for the short to medium term of current consumers with this new technology coming on through, against the background of it being safer? Not just being new, but being safer. And what sort of problems will that cause in the financial liquidity of that particular market?
Just to be clear, lithium batteries aren't unsafe. They're still statistically less likely to catch fire than a petrol car.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
Just make sure we state that. Just make sure we state that. So,
but as always, I look at these things from a dealer's perspective, and I'm saying, well, okay, if we're going to be looking at trading these vehicles and selling these vehicles 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years time, what is going to be the disadvantage and advantage to having those in stock? What is that going to mean? Is it going to make them specialized vehicles if there's new technology over the horizon? What sort of residual will that give our old technology? All these questions as dealers we have to ask ourselves.
Speaking to EV specialist dealers, I'd rather that general dealers stay the hell out of it anyway, because there are a large number of standard dealers who don't want to deal with EVs properly, and they do themselves a disservice when they enter the market.
I wasn't going
the EV specialists would rather stay out of it.
I wasn't really going to get into this, but you forced me, Graham. There has been some research recently, and the research carried out by Fire Service New Zealand and other emergency responders and NZTA, with funding from the NZTA, I understand, that clearly showed that petrol car fires are more dangerous because they explode, and diesel takes a little bit longer, but they also explode. Mm-hmm. Whereas battery fires just burn with intense heat, and they provide you more time to get out, other than the ones that explode. So that I'm not denying that occasionally a full EV battery in car has exploded, but it's extremely rare. So you've got to be able to compare apples with apples. And so the problem is wire shorting out. And if you get a wire shorting out and a car starts to burn, the one that you want to get away from is the one that's got fossil fuels in the tank, because they become very explosive. Mm-hmm. Always become explosive. Whereas an EV battery isn't always explosive, just burns with a lot of heat.
Bear in mind, before you think I'm going to run away and trash the EV brand, do bear in mind, I say these things because on behalf of the fact that I hear them all the time. These do not necessarily represent my personal opinion. As Richard will well know, I'd probably quite happily have there's a number of different EV vehicles I'd quite happily have in my garage right about now.
He wants a BYD Seal Performance.
Yep, got it. Haven't gone away from that as an idea. But we hear this stuff all the time. We hear the chatter from the public, from the people on the ground, the people that we're talking to all the time. So I have to pay attention to it, because it's a narrative that somewhere along the line we have to either overcome or accept.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Right, we're moving on to the story that video just came from. BYD New Zealand expands network after long-term deal confirmed. Atiko Automotive New Zealand is expanding its BYD dealer and service network across the country following the signing of a long-term agreement to distribute the Chinese brand locally early this year. Now, you're probably going, well, we heard about this early this year. Well, problem is they've now, in Australia, the local distributor has had its contract not renewed, and BYD will be directly in Australia. But they seem to have no intention of coming to New Zealand, and so Atiko's going forward full stream ahead. They have a long-term agreement. They're looking for some dealers, looking for a dealer in Southland, and some service agents around the place. So if you read the story, if you're in one of those places and you want to sell probably what will be one of the world's top brands in a few years' time, now's your time to get on board early. We also talk about some stuff coming. They're talking about the BYD Seagull coming to New Zealand, which is this amazing little car that I drove in China. It's tiny, but I fit behind myself in it, and it is hilarious to drive. So fun, so mature for a little car. Super cool. Super cool. Big fan of that one. They've also got some really tasty plug-in hybrid SUVs coming. Avanti Finance, they've expanded the auto lending team with new relationship managers. Avanti Finance is enhancing its presence in the automotive finance market with the appointment of 2 new auto relationship managers, part of a wider push to provide better support to car dealers across New Zealand. The company has named Leo Gregan as its representative in the Waikato and Bay of Plenty, while Chloe Webster takes charge of relationships in Christchurch and the Upper South Island. The appointments come shortly after Avanti's rebrand and reflect the lender's growing focus on providing tailored, regionally based dealer finance support. Keep in mind, Avanti Finance is a pretty big operation now. They've got Motor Central under their remit. They've also appointed a new CFO and they already had a general manager of auto. So yeah, really expanding there. So good to see them really doubling down on their dealer representation. Yeah. Now, nice little story. Star Insurers back Street Smarts. We all know about the Street Smart program. It's a program that teaches young drivers practical skills on tracks. Greg Murphy is a big proponent and part of that program. So Star Insurers jumped on board. Hat tip them for them doing that. That is a good sponsorship.
Yep. For
them to jump on. Now, one that I'm sure there'll be some opinion here on. Auckland man sentenced after issuing 677 fake WAFs. Now, back in the day, Graham, I'm sure we all knew the guy that you go to for your dodgy WAF. But I thought that was kind of starting to wind down now, particularly after all the issues around.
I grew up in Waiuku with cars in the 1980s. There wasn't such a thing as a non-dodgy warrant of fitness, I don't think.
An Auckland man who frequently issued hundreds of warrant of fitnesses without being authorised has been sentenced to home detention. In the case the transport regulator says should serve as a warning to others. Imroz Taki, the owner of Newmarket Automotive Repairs, was sentenced in the Auckland District Court on May 26 to 10 months and 2 weeks home detention. He'd earlier pleaded guilty to charge relating to the unlawful issuing of WAFs. According to the Transport Agency, Taki issued 677 WAFs between December 2022 and June 2023. Despite not being an approved vehicle inspector, he instead used the credentials of a former employee and failed to carry out any inspections. So
now, can I just stop you there? Because this is an important distinction between other cases we've seen. We've seen cases where inspectors or there's been warrant of fitnesses issued and inspections carried out, but the credentials of the so-called inspector have been false or expired.
Wrong person's number going into the system.
Selling effectively the old days, selling the warrant of fitness book in the pub.
Well, he didn't. What says here, he failed to carry out any inspections. 677 cars, no inspections. They cancelled all warrant of fitnesses issued during the period. Affected vehicle owners were contacted and asked to have their vehicles re-inspected, and a significant number were found to have safety faults. So yeah, that's a fun one.
It is.
It's a lot.
But so my point being, Richard, is that I imagine a large number of owners of those 677 warrant of fitness issued vehicles would be fully aware of the fact their vehicles were not inspected, because you'd expect that as part of the process of going to a shop for a warrant of fitness, that you may or may not observe the warrant of fitness process taking place. And if it didn't, if they just walked out the front and said, hey, thanks for your $70, here's your label, that they'd be aware. In other words, it shouldn't come as much of a surprise to the 677 warrant of fitness owners that things have gone south with their label.
Yeah. 40 grand of revenue off those 677 WAFs without doing the inspection. So
yeah, I don't have a lot of sympathy.
Yes. In fact, is 10 months home detention not enough? Considering that those cars could have killed someone.
Could he still do non-inspections during 10 months home detention if he sits up home in his garage?
Well, he could still probably go to work. You're allowed to go to work on home detention.
Yeah. So I don't know. Does that really say anything at all these days? After all, it seems to be socially cool now to have an ankle bracelet and part of your social media TikTok. So, just might be an advantage for you. That could be a marketing gig for you, ankle bracelet motors.
Now, a brand that I think people should take note of, having been up to China a few times and think these guys, well, I don't think this brand's is anywhere remotely there yet, but I think it will be in the future. Ingham Motor Group to represent Chery across 4 New Zealand locations. Chery New Zealand's confirmed that Ingham Motor Group will become the latest addition to its expanding dealership network ahead of the brand's official launch in July. 4 Ingham dealerships in North Shore, Hamilton, Tauranga, and Taupo will provide full sales and after-service support for the Chinese automaker, bringing Chery's national dealer count to 10. Chery with their various other brands, they're definitely going for the big names. So I think Winger's just joined there as well, rather than the old Chinese model of potentially start with some of the smaller names. These guys are going big on showrooms. Yeah. Now, government passes MTA's third warrant of fitness check. The government is roadworthy and driving forward in key areas, the Motor Trade Association says in its third warrant of fitness check for the term. There's a mixture of passes and fails, but the government's progress on workplace training and woke banking means it can leave the workshop with another 6-month sticker. MTA communications people and leadership, don't use terms like that. You're a professional organization. Grow up. And you can talk to me about that if you're grumpy at me saying that. You can say banking, but why say woke banking? Jesus.
I think if you're in the
it's
farming
over.
sector,
The culture war is over. Anyway.
you say that in the farming sector, you can't call it anything else if you're a farmer. Argue me that.
Call it something else, but yeah.
I'll take you for a road trip to go and meet the tenant on the farm.
I'm not saying there's no issues around that, Graham. What I'm saying, though, is that title is just dumb as far as I'm concerned. At the halfway point of the term, the government is overall doing a good job for the automotive sector. Head of Communications Simon Bradwell says the return of workplace training to industry was an important and welcome step that MTA had led the call for. Big tick for that. We're seeing with Trump and Elon Musk at the moment how well it goes when you start getting into the whole that's woke, that's this, that's that kind of term. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
David just wants to point out to you, if you're watching right now, the southerly wind in Wellington is affecting his internet connection. So if you're seeing David as a small little circle and that's about all, he's there somewhere, but his connection is a bit average. We may have lost him.
I'll pull him up. Well, I've moved him to the side while he gets his connection sorted. Last story for today, anyway. So he stayed for the best bits. Field days next week. Are you going to go, Graham?
No, I'm in Australia next week.
Oh, yeah, I can't. I'm not going either.
It's the AIMVIA AGM. If any of you out there in dealer or distributor land have an interest in what's going on in Australia in the non-franchise, non-OEM sector, we have our annual general meeting on Wednesday in Mascot in Sydney, and it should be a goodie.
Which is a short meeting followed by a few drinks?
Actually, no, it's a long meeting followed by a few drinks. We've inverted the model. We've actually got stuff to say. We've got a couple of really good guest speakers from the government. And no, it should be quite a hotly charged meeting for a number of different reasons. As always, Australia is the gift that keeps on giving when it comes to interference and other things within our industry.
Now, I could have put any story up, but I put this one up just because it was the first one available that I had there. A whole pile of new vehicles on show, but one that's I think really interesting is the LDV Teron 9. I saw this thing in China. It is crazy. It's kind of like F-150 size almost. It's got a mid-gate, so the back end of the tray opens up and you can push right through into the cabin. Diesel engine, though there's an electric one floating around as well. Go have a look at that. Quite a different twist on the ute market. Absolutely massive. And it tows 3.5 tons. So should be pretty appealing there. But lots of other stuff floating around. I think if you go there, BYD will give you $5,000 off anything. And all the various brands have specials. Of course, JAC has taken over from Hyundai as the kind of big automotive sponsor of the event. I believe they might have a pie or two floating around for you to enjoy. But yeah. Field days back next week. Expect a bit of a sales bump from that.
It'll be a spend up. It really will, but maybe not so much in the
$10 a kilo for dairy or something like that.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, so I'll as you probably know out there, I'll attach my brand to this. But yeah, I do have a passing interest because I do actually have a farm, and our tenants are in the dairy sector. And yeah, this has just been an astonishing year. But then beef as well, things like beef prices. I come from a background that we farmed pedigree Herefords for, 2 generations, actually. We're out of that marketplace now. But again, never seen prices as good as they are. But don't forget, the farming sector is also not stupid. And they won't invest money and splash it out just for the sake of it. I think they're far more astute than perhaps they were 15, 20 years ago, when a good payout just meant go buy a new truck. So I think we'll see a lot of reinvestment in equipment. So if you're a tractor or an implement salesperson right now, or particularly new agricultural methods, everything from pasture fertilization through, it's payday. It really is. It's payday. Farmers, I think, are pretty savvy enough to reinvest in the things that actually make money.
And and the interesting thing is the macroeconomic element of that is that if we get reports afterwards of a massive field days, I think that could be a real boost to the economy, because what the economy really is lacking at the moment is confidence. And even just a big field days result could really give a bit of nudge to the confidence out there. So here's hoping.
And it was one of the buffers against the talk about, the so-called Trump tariffs and the meltdown in the United States was New Zealand's really good at growing shit that people in the rest of the world want to buy. And that hasn't changed.
Yeah. Exactly. Right, that's it for our first big episode back in a while. I'm not sure if we'll have one next week. Let's see what we can do. But we will try. And because it'll be 5 at night. Yeah, something like that. Anyway.
I'll be still half asleep from getting home. I think I arrived back in New Zealand about 1 a.m. I think, the usual red eye back from Sydney. But I'll be there. I'm always there.
Yeah. Exactly. Awesome. Thanks everyone for joining, and we may or may not catch you next week.
Happy week.